On Christmas Eve, my dad handed out gifts and said loudly, "We didn't get you anything. You haven't earned it." The room laughed as I sat there empty-handed until I reached into my bag, placed a small box on the table, and said calmly, "That's fine, because I brought something that will change this family forever." The entire living room fell silent, and every pair of eyes turned toward me when I started opening that. I, 32M, had spent the last 3 months planning this exact moment, and now that it was here, my hands were surprisingly steady. The living room was decorated like something out of a catalog. My stepmother had outdone herself this year with the garland, the enormous tree, the coordinated ornaments. Everything looked perfect, which was exactly how she wanted the world to see our family. Perfect. Successful. United. I sat on the ottoman near the fireplace, the same spot I'd occupied for the last 8 Christmases since my father remarried. My half-siblings were sprawled across the leather couches, their spouses and children filling every available seat. 23 people total. All of them family. Most of them strangers to me in every way that mattered. Dad stood by the tree in his cashmere sweater, playing Santa Claus like he did every year. He'd hand out gifts with commentary, little jokes, stories about why he'd chosen each present. Everyone would laugh and applaud. It was a performance, and he was excellent at it. My younger half-brother got a set of golf clubs he'd been wanting. Dad made a speech about his recent promotion. My half-sister received diamond earrings and a weekend spa package. Dad praised her volunteer work and her perfect children. Her husband got a watch. Even the grandchildren received elaborate gifts, each one presented with fanfare. I watched the pile of presents under the tree diminish. I'd stopped hoping years ago, but some pathetic part of me still counted. Still noticed that nothing had my name on it. When the last gift was distributed, Dad turned to the room with his hands on his hips, that booming voice filling the space. He announced that we didn't get me anything, that I hadn't earned it. The room erupted in laughter. Not cruel laughter, exactly. More like uncomfortable amusement. The kind people offer when someone makes a joke that's slightly too harsh, but they don't want to make things awkward by not laughing. My stepmother smiled from her chair. My half-siblings exchanged glances. I sat there with empty hands while wrapping paper littered the floor around everyone else's feet. I'd earned 3 degrees. I'd built a career. I'd never asked them for money, never caused drama, never made demands. But earned was the word he'd used, and everyone had laughed. I reached into my bag slowly, pulling out a small metal lockbox. The kind you'd use for important documents. I placed it on the coffee table in front of me with a deliberate thud that cut through the chatter. I told them calmly that it was fine I didn't get anything, because I'd brought something that would change this family forever. The silence was immediate and total. 23 pairs of eyes locked onto me. Even the children stopped fidgeting. My father's expression shifted from jovial to wary. He asked what I was talking about, his voice lacking its usual commanding tone. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I pulled the key from my pocket and unlocked the box. Inside were folders. Neat, organized, labeled. I'd spent weeks preparing them, making copies, checking facts, ensuring everything was documented and irrefutable. I pulled out the first folder and held it up. I explained that 6 months ago, I'd received a call from a woman I'd never met. She'd found me through ancestry DNA testing. She was my half-sister, not from my stepmother. From a woman Dad had an affair with 28 years ago. The room remained frozen. My stepmother's face had gone pale. I continued. The woman had reached out because she wanted to know her biological father. She'd shared her story. Dad had been involved with her mother for 2 years while still married to my own mother. When the affair ended, the woman's mother was already pregnant. She'd raised the child alone, never seeking child support, never making trouble. My father started to speak, but I raised my hand. I wasn't finished. I pulled out the second folder. DNA results. I'd met my half-sister 3 months ago. We'd both submitted tests. The results were conclusive. I'd had them verified by 2 separate companies, and I'd included the documentation showing Dad's genetic markers matched the family tree data I'd submitted years ago for genealogy research. My stepmother stood up abruptly, her hand covering her mouth. She asked if this was some kind of sick joke. I looked at her directly and told her I wished it was. I explained that my half-sister hadn't wanted money or drama. She just wanted to know where she came from. But when I dug deeper, when I'd started asking questions and looking into timelines, I discovered something else. I pulled out the third folder. Financial records. Bank statements I'd obtained through my half-sister, who'd received them from her mother. Payments made regularly for the first 5 years of her life. Not child support through legal channels. Cash payments, documented by the mother in a ledger, along with bank deposit receipts. The payments had stopped abruptly when I was 7 years old. I did the math aloud. The payments stopped right around the time my mother got sick. Terminal cancer. She'd needed expensive treatments. Our savings had been depleted. I remembered those years vividly. The stress, the fear, the way Dad had worked extra hours. Except he hadn't worked extra hours. I'd found his employment records. His salary had remained steady. The extra money he'd claimed to be earning had never existed. The money he'd been sending to his other child had simply stopped. He'd made a choice. His legitimate family over his illegitimate one. My dying mother over his secret daughter. My stepmother sank back into her chair. My half-brother asked if I was sure about this, his voice barely above a whisper. I told him I'd verified everything multiple times. I'd hired a private investigator to confirm details. I had phone records, old emails I'd recovered from Dad's ancient laptop that I'd found in storage, photographs. Everything. My father finally found his voice. He told me I had no right to dig into his past, that this was a private matter, that I was destroying the family. I laughed. Actually laughed. I asked him which family he meant. The one sitting in this room? The one he'd built on secrets and lies? Or the one he'd abandoned when it became inconvenient? I pulled out another folder. This one was thinner. I explained that my half-sister's mother had died 2 years ago. Cancer, like my own mother. But unlike my mother, she'd had no one to help with medical bills. She'd died in debt. My half-sister had been left with nothing. I'd found records showing Dad had known about the illness. The mother had reached out one final time, asking for help. He'd ignored her messages. Let her die struggling. My stepmother was crying now. She asked how long he'd known I'd found out. I told her he didn't know until right now. I'd kept this secret the same way he'd kept his. I'd smiled at family dinners. I'd attended holidays. I played the role of the dutiful son who didn't quite measure up, who hadn't earned his place. I'd done all of that while planning this exact moment. My younger half-sister asked what I wanted. Money? Was this blackmail? I looked at her and explained that I didn't want money. I had my own. What I wanted was for everyone in this room to understand who they'd been celebrating, who they'd been protecting, who they'd been choosing over me, year after year. I told them that every dismissive comment, every forgotten birthday, every Christmas like this one where I sat empty-handed while they drowned in gifts, had been justified in their minds because I was somehow lesser, somehow not enough. But the truth was, I was the only one who'd actually earned my place in this family. I'd survived despite Dad's choices, not because of them. I pulled out the final folder and slid it across to my stepmother. I told her it contained account information for a trust I'd established for my half-sister. I'd used part of my inheritance from my mother's parents. People Dad had conveniently forgotten to mention had left me a substantial sum. The trust would pay for my half-sister's education, her living expenses, everything her mother should have had help with, but didn't because Dad had made his choice. I explained that I'd also sent copies of everything in the lockbox to my half-siblings, their spouses, and several other family members via email, scheduled to send at midnight. They'd all wake up on Christmas morning with the truth in their inboxes. My father moved toward me, his face red, veins visible on his neck. He demanded to know what I thought this would accomplish. I stood up, meeting his eyes. I told him it would accomplish exactly what it needed to. The truth. Out in the open. No more perfect family facade. No more pretending. I told him I was done earning my place in a family that never wanted me to have one. My stepmother asked through tears if I was leaving, if I was cutting them off. I considered the question. I told her I didn't know yet. Maybe I'd do exactly what Dad did to his other daughter. Just stop showing up. Stop trying. Let them wonder if I was okay, if I needed anything, if I even thought about them. Or maybe I'd stick around and watch them deal with the consequences of their choices. Watch them explain to extended family, to friends, to their church community. Watch the perfect image crumble. I picked up my bag and the empty lockbox. I told them all to enjoy the rest of their evening, to enjoy their gifts. I mentioned that I was heading to meet my half-sister for dinner. We'd planned to spend Christmas together, the two people Dad had decided weren't worth the effort. As I walked toward the door, my younger half-brother called out. He asked if any of it had been real. The family dinners. The holidays. Had I actually cared, or had it all been an act leading to this? I stopped and turned back. I told him honestly that it had been real for me. For years, I desperately wanted to be part of this family. I'd bent myself into shapes trying to fit, trying to be worth their attention. But somewhere along the way, I'd realized I was the only one trying. I was the only one who saw the inequality, the dismissiveness, the casual cruelty dressed up as jokes. So yes, the last 3 months had been an act. But everything before that, that had been real. That had been me, hoping. I walked out into the cold December night. My car was parked at the curb, and I could see the warm glow of the house behind me. All those lights and decorations visible through the windows. My phone buzzed as I unlocked the car. A text from my half-sister, asking if I'd gone through with it. I typed back that it was done. She responded asking how I felt. I sat in the driver's seat, engine running, heat slowly filling the car. How did I feel? Not triumphant, exactly. Not even satisfied. More like lighter. Like I'd been carrying something heavy for so long that I'd forgotten what it felt like to stand up straight. I'd spent years being the problem. The son who wasn't good enough. The reminder of Dad's first marriage. The obligation they fulfilled by including me, but never quite embracing me. Now they knew. Now they had to sit with it. The affairs. The abandoned child. The lies. The financial choices that prioritized image over integrity. And most importantly, they had to sit with the fact that I'd known for months. That I'd smiled and nodded and played along while knowing exactly what kind of man my father was. I drove to the restaurant where I'd agreed to meet my half-sister. She was already there, sitting in a booth near the window. She looked nervous, picking at her napkin. When I slid into the seat across from her, she asked immediately how it went. I told her everything. The silence. The shock. My stepmother's tears. Dad's anger. The email scheduled to send at midnight. She asked if I felt bad about it, about exposing everything so publicly. I thought about the question. I told her that I felt bad about a lot of things. I felt bad that her mother had died alone and in debt. I felt bad that she'd grown up not knowing half her family. I felt bad that my own mother had suffered while Dad played both sides. But did I feel bad about telling the truth? No, not even a little. She smiled at that, a sad but understanding smile. She told me her mother had always said that secrets were like poison. They might not kill you immediately, but they'd make you sick if you held on to them long enough. We ordered dinner. We talked about our lives, finding strange connections and similarities. We had the same laugh, the same tendency to overthink things, the same stubborn streak. It occurred to me that this woman, this stranger I'd met 3 months ago, felt more like family than the people I'd just left behind. Maybe family wasn't about blood or obligation. Maybe it was about showing up, about seeing someone and choosing to care. Around midnight, my phone started buzzing. Messages coming in. First from my younger half-brother, then my half-sister, then extended family members. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. Aunts and uncles. I silenced the phone and placed it face down on the table. My half-sister raised her glass of wine. She said we should toast to something, to new beginnings maybe. I picked up my glass and told her we should toast to the truth. However messy, however painful, however inconvenient. To the truth. We clinked glasses and drank. The restaurant was full of families celebrating. Happy voices, laughter, the clink of silverware on plates. Christmas music played softly overhead. Everything looked normal and warm and right. And for the first time in 8 years, sitting across from someone who understood what it meant to be Dad's dirty secret, I actually felt like I belonged somewhere. The rest of the night passed quietly. We ate. We talked. We made plans to meet again after the holidays, to figure out what came next. When I finally got home to my apartment, I checked my phone. 63 messages. I scrolled through them. Anger, confusion, hurt, accusations, pleas for explanation. One message stood out. From my father. 3 words, we need to talk. I deleted it without responding. I didn't know him a conversation. I didn't know him an explanation or a chance to justify himself. I'd given him 32 years of chances. I'd given him every opportunity to choose differently, to be better. He'd chosen who he was. Over and over again. Now it was my turn to choose. I chose myself. I chose the truth. I chose to stop trying to earn something that should have been freely given. I sat on my couch in the dark, my apartment quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. Outside, I could hear the distant sound of Christmas music from a neighbor's place. Tomorrow, the family would wake up to chaos. Relationships would fracture. Secrets would spread beyond their control. The perfect image they'd maintained would shatter. And I'd wake up free. free from pretending, free from hoping, free from the weight of trying to be enough for people who decided long ago that I wasn't. I thought about my mother, gone for over 20 years now. I wondered what she would have thought about all of this. Would she have approved of my revenge? Or would she have counseled forgiveness? I like to think she'd understand. She'd spent her final years in pain, not knowing that money that could have helped her had been diverted elsewhere. She died believing in Dad's sacrifice, his devotion. She deserved better. My half-sister's mother had deserved better. We all had. The truth was its own kind of gift. Brutal, unwrapped, impossible to return. But honest. And honestly, that was all I'd ever really wanted. Not presents. Not performances. Just honesty. I finally had it. Merry Christmas to me.